admissions advisor for the University of California, Merced. I'm also not only do I go out and do talk to you nice folks about the University of California, but I'm part of the evaluation team. What does that mean? Is that basically when students apply to our campus, I basically look at your application and determine whether you've met all the requirements and to see whether you're a good fit for our campus. Today, we're going to be covering basically an overview of the University of California and cover some of the logistics in regards to what is needed for you to apply to the University of California. When we look at the University of California, we always like to think that you should be looking at the University of California as one institution instead of many campuses into one. Not every campus stands alone as a university, because the University of California, if you look at it, we're in the same mission. We have the same philosophy in regards to our students who apply to our campuses. Technically, there are 10 campuses with the University of California, and out of those 10 campuses, you can apply to 9. Out of those 9, it is your job to think about which campus is the right place for you. Now, the 10th campus, the University of California, San Francisco, will focus only on health careers. And that's only after you've actually graduated from another university. You will go there to either get your nursing, your master's in nursing, or you want to become a dentist or a doctor, you will go to that campus. But you, as a student, and your students do have 9 options all the way from the top of the University of California, Davis, all the way down to UC San Diego. That is something that a lot of you should start thinking about, the campuses itself. But it takes more than just looking to see where the campus are located. And one of the things that I'm going to recommend that a lot of you do is that a lot of you think about, you want a big campus, and a lot of the students are ready to meet a big campus. And you ask yourself the question, do I want a campus that has over 35,000 students? Do I want a campus that has between 20 and 30,000, or do I want a smaller campus? Okay, and that's perfectly fine. Or maybe a lot of you think, hey, I want a campus that's on the beach, and you're thinking about Santa Barbara and Santa Cruz, the only 2 campuses that are on the beach. And then you think about, I want to be in the city, and you think about Irvine, you think about San Diego, you think about Berkeley, you think about UCLA as being part of the city. Or maybe you want to go inland. Davis, Merced, and of course Riverside we're all part of that system. However, as I mentioned to you, we're pretty much one university with all these 9 options for you. But the one thing that should be driving you as a student or a parent and thinking about advising your students is, does that campus I'm looking at have what I want to study? Many times than not, we have students who always apply to any given UC campus, and not realizing that the programs that they're searching are not on that campus. And that should be the driving factor in looking at the University of California as to which campus can give you the best benefit. For example, if your student was interested in going into nursing, for example, then there's only 2 campuses that offer that, UCLA and UCI. So that's one way of looking at it. Or let alone, if you wanted to look at a program that was offering a business administration program, then you will look at Berkeley, UCR, and UCI as an option. So you see, you do have a lot of options, but at the same time, when students are searching and looking and researching and looking at any particular campus, the one question that should be driving you should be, does that campus have what I want to study? And that's going to be very important to a lot of you, because of the fact that this is where it's going to drive where you apply to any given campus. So that's going to be something that you as a student and as a parent, you should think about as you go forward. So in terms of looking at the University of California, think about this for a minute. We are a great institution, and why would you want to apply to the University of California? Well, we have over 700 majors across the board. We have our main focus is basically a research type of institution, where basically we as an institution that drives the funding for the University of California is that research. And we offer a lot of opportunities. However, just because you think about the University of California just being a research institution, it doesn't mean we don't have hands-on. Okay, but we are committed to the students of the state of California. If you look at the cross spectrum of the University of California, you think about the population that attends our campuses. 82% of our students who are from California are a member or a student at the University of California. 40% of our students who attend the UC system are first generation. And then, of course, 28% of our students who come from community colleges attend the University of California. It is a matter of thinking about how the University of California is committed to not only to the students of California, but providing all the services that come into play when looking at our campuses for choice. And again, I want to emphasize this that the University of California has been one campus for all. You think about one university for all, you think about the campuses themselves as they fear. Smaller campus like Santa Cruz or Merced, a mid-sized campus, like for example, you're looking at maybe Irvine, Davis, or maybe Santa Barbara, or a bigger campus such as San Diego, Berkeley, and of course UCLA. So those are the things that you'll be looking at, and think about the focus that the University of California is prepared to give the student in regards to their education. In terms of looking at the University of California, and for first-year students, as incoming freshmen, when they apply to the University of California, things have changed a little bit for this year, and we want to be responsible in giving you the correct information so that you'll be able to make the best decision for your students and how to approach these factors in regards to the application process. A lot of you who have a lot of questions in regards about the admissions and things have changed this year, I'm going to cover that because it is important for a lot of you to think about how the University of California is making changes to meet the needs of the students of today's time, especially with this whole thing with the pandemic and the health issues that we're having. We want to make sure that the student who's thinking of applying to the University of California is essentially considered for admissions to the University of California. So this year we're looking at the aspects of the subject area and the GPA for admissions purposes. Now, one of the things that a lot of the students who have been told for the past 4 years that are seniors this year, or even previous to that, that there are other components that are coming to play in regards to the admissions process for any given student who applies to the UC. And one of the things that I want to address and make you feel at ease is that this is the way we're going to be approaching it. And I'm going to give you an example or examples of how we are approaching this year for students who are going to apply for the University of California. First, we're going to start off with giving you the essential basics. And one of the things that I want you to understand is that the essential basics of the A through G requirements are basically that. Keep in mind that students have been trained from freshman year that the A through G requirements are essential for them to apply to the University of California. While that is true, and we want to make sure that the student who takes these courses becomes well-versed in many areas so that they can meet the challenges at the university. But one of the things that I always recommend, and one of the things that a lot of the universities within the UC system are looking for is this. Yes, you could take all the A through G courses from your 2 years of history, from the 4 years of English to the 3 years of math, and of course 4 years. Some of you will take 4 years, that's recommended, or your 2 years of lab and 2 years of English other than language other than English, and of course your visual performing arts and your prep elective. The responsibility comes on the student where they decide to basically say, you know what, I'm going to go through high school and take all these A through G courses, but at the same time, I'm going to be taking challenge courses by taking the honors or the AP. If your school offers an IB program, that becomes part of the competitiveness that we look for. When a student takes these courses apart from the general courses in regards to the A through G, then they become more competitive for admissions, because then we'll see that the student has taken an effort to take these honors and AP courses. And of course, we do want to make sure that the student does well in these courses because, again, it prepares them for the next level of their education. Along the way, a lot of you will probably ask, well, my student is going to take an AP course, for example, but they will not take the exam. And I'm going to get into that a little bit because it's very important that they follow through when it comes to that. It is imperative that the student, when they're looking at what courses they're taking and how they're approaching into that class, it's going to be very important because when the universities of California look at the applicant, they want to see whether that was that growth that has come by. They want to see that the growth was there from that student. Now, one of the things that I want to reassure, and a lot of times when the student looks at any given university within the UC system, they always focus on the GPA or the average GPA. While the average GPA is not necessarily an indicator whether the student is going to get involved, is going to be offered admissions to any given UC campus, please eliminate that from your thought. Okay, do not focus on the averages because what happens a lot of times is that when a student looks at an average GPA from any given university, they actually get discouraged from applying to that university. So the mission of the University of California and the message is basically this. In order for you to meet the requirements for the University of California, you must have a 3.0 and above GPA. Yes, the higher the better, the more competitive you become for admissions. Okay. Along the way, the University of California will look at your 10th, 11th grade for calculating that GPA. Now, keep in mind that we're also going to use, if the student decides to take a class right after freshman year and a class in the summer before the senior year, we're going to use those areas also to calculate the GPA for the student, utilizing the A through G. What does that mean? A lot of students think that by taking PE or a health, unless it's already been approved for the A through G courses at your campus, we're not going to calculate that into your GPA, specifically the PE. And students will always say, well, you know what, I have a 3 point something, and that would include the GPA, including GPE. The University of California wants to make sure that the student is competitive enough by these A through G courses. And by doing so, we want to make sure that also that any courses that have not been approved by the A through G courses for your school are not included in the calculating of your A through G GPA. Okay, so keep that in mind for a second. Another thing that you should take in consideration is this: a lot of you students will say when you fill out the application, okay, when you fill out the application, you're going to see that in your part you're going to be saying, "Oh, I took honors English, for example, in 10th grade, or even or 9th grade, or just keep it in 10th grade." If that class is not identified as an honors course in your A through G courses for your school, it is not designated as an extra point in that case. So keep that in mind, because a lot of times we have students who basically apply to the university and they say, well, this is an honor course. But in the reality, when we look at the applicant and we see that it's not an honor course, we basically don't calculate that extra point that comes along with that. Having said that, we use about 8 semesters of the honor points for the students to be calculated into the GPA. Yes, the student can take more than 4 classes of AP or honors, and then that will come later down the road when they basically are finally looked at to see whether they pass the AP's exams and they get a 3 or 4 better. And that depends on which campus they apply to. They will get a notice and acknowledgement for their success in providing those AP's exams scores with a 3 or better if they receive some kind of credit for those courses. But at this moment in your time is basically when you apply to the University of California, everything you put into the application is basically self-reported. So I want you to be aware of that as well. Okay, we don't use a plus or minus scoring system on our campus. If a student receives, for example, B minus in any given course from your high school, we don't look at that plus or minus. We just look at it as a solid grade. And I want you to be aware of those kinds of things. Now, keep in mind again, the higher the better, the more competitive you become for your if the higher the better your GPA is, the more competitive you become for admissions for the University of California. And that's the foundation for us to start thinking about the individual. Does the student have the A through G met? That's one. And at this point in your path will be 11 courses. But then again, a lot of you have taken more than that. So you'll be in that aspect, we will be looking at that. Second, we're going to be looking to see whether you have met the 3.0 and above GPA. Okay. Again, going back to the idea, the higher the better, the more competitive you become for admissions. We are going to be looking at your weighted GPA for admissions purposes. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the app at your GPA. And don't worry about you putting the GPA into the application. It does it automatically once you apply to the university. Another thing that you should be aware of, but it's not necessarily something that you should focus on, is by looking at you as local path or the ELC, eligibility in local context, or statewide path. A lot of you will hear that if you are designated or identified as a top 9%, you will be guaranteed admissions to one of the UC campuses. Okay, keep in mind that while that might be true, don't solely focus on this aspect of the applicant when applying to the university, let alone students will be notified after they apply to the University of California of being identified. If your school participates in this aspect, will be identified as being the top 9%. Now, while some students might rely on this aspect, keep in mind that even though we might offer you this option, when your student applies to the university and they're offered an admissions to a UC, it might not be the UC of your choice. It might be a UC that you basically not think about applying. So keep that in mind. So don't focus too much on this because we want you to make sure that you are basically looking, because we want to make sure that we look at the applicant as a whole, not necessarily just as the top 9%. But this is one option that a lot of students do have. So at the end of the day, when we look at the student in selecting the student, we're going to look at the application pool. We're going to make sure that, for example, one of the things that a lot of students always question and they're always concerned about, we're going to compare you to the other students in your district or other schools in your district. That's one thing we don't do. We want to make sure that you understand this, because a lot of students have the idea that because you attend maybe Glen A. Wilson or other schools in your area, in your community, Workman, we're going to compare you with those campuses. We're not. What we're going to be doing is basically look at you at the student, as a student, and we're going to look at the academic factors that are offered at your campus. Okay, that's one. In that, those academic factors, we're going to be looking at to see whether what kind of classes you take advantage of. Did you take advantage of the honors or the AP? And we're going to basically uh, compare you with the students in your own school. So we're never going to compare to the other high schools, let alone with the other districts in the area. That'll be necessarily not a good thing for a lot of the students, because what happens a lot of times, just to give you an example, there are some high schools in the state of California that may not offer more than 3 AP courses or honor courses. So we want to make sure that we evaluate the student based on what they bring to the table from their school. And then, of course, looking at the comprehensive factors that come into play. In that, you'll be looking at these aspects of the academic achievement, the personal and school context. And again, going back to the idea, what does your school offer for for you to take advantage of, i.e., the honor courses, the AP courses, let alone any programs that your school's involved with, maybe with Gear Up or maybe the trio programs, the upper bounds, and all that. Those become another factor in regards to looking at the student as a whole. Now, another factor too, which I'm going to cover in a bit, are the PIQs, the personal insight questions. And I'm going to cover that a little bit because that becomes an important role in the process of evaluating students, let alone the activity and awards. And then when looking at the activity awards, please, when you put these in, you need to add a little bit more description in regards to what uh, the extracurricular activities you put in your application, let alone the awards. Please don't do this in your application. When putting the awards, don't put in there that, in the 10th grade, I receive a 3.8 honor roll. Don't do that, because we already know that. Only if you are part of the National Honor Society or anything that your district has given you acknowledgement of your academic merits, then put it in there and give a full description of that. Okay. If you have any special talents or any life challenges. And one of the things that I want to make sure that you understand too is that a lot of you in today's times, we're all going through some challenges, and we all have some special circumstances. For example, a lot of you are first-time online learners. Maybe a lot of you have some challenges because of this whole pandemic. Those are the things that we're looking for as far as the applicant is concerned. We want to make sure that we get a sense of who the applicant is, and we want to get a sense of what you're bringing to the table. Thus, the PIQs. In your PIQs, we're going to be looking at these components in order for us to get a better understanding as to who the applicant is. Okay, I want you to be aware of this. In these 8 questions, there is no wrong, no right answer. We're not looking to see whether you're the best writer in the world. We're not looking to see whether you know how to use the thesaurus. We're not looking to see whether you're a good writer. What we're looking for is genuine. We want to see how humble you are, and want to see the true student that appears on this. The University of California does not interview, nor do we ask for a lot of recommendations. So your interview process are these 8 questions. Now, what I always recommend to students is that ask yourself the question that's being asked through the PIQs, then verbally answer it and record your answer. You're going to get a very different aspect instead of just writing it down. I also suggest that students answer all 8, because you never know. You might answer more information, or you might give more information one question than the other. But we ask you that you submit 4 of these questions. Okay. Again, there is no wrong, no right answer. We're not looking for you to be the best writer. The one thing that we want you to focus on when answering these questions, okay, you have to have at least 350 words per question. Okay. And not only that, the one thing that we do ask that you do answer is that if you look at all these questions, first of all, you're going to notice that a lot of these questions do overlap. And that's perfectly fine. But we want you to also think about how these questions stand alone and how you're going to answer them. For example, some students might say, I had a challenge in my life this past year, and you could explain that. But keep in mind that when you're looking at that challenge of this year, you got to make it more personal and how everything that happened this past year, how you overcame those challenges. Another thing that we want you to be aware of is that when you're answering these questions, make sure that they're in the present tense, What do I mean by that? A lot of students have the tendency to write about their experiences about, maybe for example, a student might write about, when I was in in middle school, I lost my grandparents and my GPA dipped, and that was a challenge that I overcame. Well, that's, in your life, that's interesting, and for us, we feel bad for you. But how does that transcend to the present? How does that affect you to today? That's the most important factor. How can you explain those experiences to today's time? Well, we had other students who've answered, I lost my parents, I was out of middle school, and I was without parents, and this is how I dealt with it. And I know that my parents basically told me to become successful, and this is what I'm doing for myself, for myself. And that's another thing too. In answering these questions, they're all about you, the student, not about your parents, not about your counselors, and not about anybody else. They're all about you. And so therefore you must answer these questions in the I factor, okay? Because the more you give us, the better understanding we have as to who the applicant is. Look, we get thousands of applicants every year, and some of these answers, they make us laugh, they make us cry, but they make us ponder. But one of the things I will reassure you is that as evaluators, we want to make sure that every student who applies to our campus has an opportunities to be admitted to one of the campuses, because we want to offer that. The University of California's mission is to offer students of California an opportunities to be part of the UC family. And that's something that a lot of you should start thinking about when you're applying to the University of California, and think about how we as a system is going to be helping you in that process. And every campus, yes, as unique as we are, every campus has the same goal. The student attends our university, our campus. The student we make sure the student gets all the resources. We got to make sure the student is ready to graduate within a reasonable time. And that's something that we want to make sure that you understand as a campus. Therefore, the PIQs become more of an interesting part of who you are as an individual, who is applying to our campuses, and think about how we evaluate you. And the more information you give us, the better it is for us to understand that aspect of your life. Okay. Now, this year has been a little bit weird for a lot of us, as mentioned to you. There was a temporary suspension of letter grades requirement for the HED courses completed in the winter, spring, and summer of 2020 for all students. Now, what does that mean? Basically, is that when you apply, that a lot of students basically in a lot of schools, and some schools went in that direction with the pass and no pass. It has two positive things. Well, it has a positive thing in that, say, for example, a student was receiving a D in Algebra 2 their fall, and then all of a sudden the school closed, and therefore, and then the second semester got a passing grade. While the student met the requirement, that D grade is still going to be calculated into their GPA. You see how that happens? The drawback too from a pass and no pass grade too is that if a student's taking an honors or AP course, they're not going to receive that extra point in that aspect. So think about those kinds of things. Not that we're trying to lessen your chance of getting to the UC. It's just that we want to see the whole picture, and this is why everything that I've mentioned so far becomes an important factor as well. The UC will continue to award UC credit consistent with previous years of AP exams completed with the 3, 4, or 5. If your school is involved in the IB, then they're going to get their credit if they receive a 5, 6, or 7 in that aspect. Another thing that you should be aware too with the process is too is that we're still, I'm saying this in quotes because I want to make sure that we are conscious of what we're telling you in regards to allowing students to submit their scores and what have you. So the UC will be test optional for fall 2021 and fall 22. Freshman applicants are not required to submit SATs or SAT scores, again, in quotes, because right now we're working the logistics out of that. And the best thing to do is just keep an eye on the University of California website for any updates that we bring out so that you'll be able to be aware. So what does that mean to test optional? You can choose to whether or not to submit the SAT or SAT scores with your application, okay? If you're unable or choose not to submit your test scores, your applicant will still receive full consideration, okay? So I want you to be aware of that because we want you to understand that with things that are occurring with the pandemic, we want to be as conscious in regards to the students who can and cannot take these exams. But if you do take them, make sure that if you do want to provide them, keep in mind that our campuses will utilize those scores for different ways of looking at you as an applicant. So for that, I want to make sure that you understand that you can submit, but it will not be used against you if you don't submit those SATs or SAT scores. Okay. Some of you will consider taking these subject tests because maybe some of the campuses you're thinking of applying to may recommend that you take those. For example, some of the maybe the science programs or the engineer programs, they might recommend that you take those exams. Make sure you get those done before your December of your senior year. Okay. Again, we want to make sure that we're conscious of how we're going to help you with the process. We want to make sure that we're conscious to make sure how we're going to assist you in the admissions process. And we don't want to take away anything from that, but other than that, what does the student bring to the picture? In other words, what experiences do they bring onto the application by looking at them as a whole? And hopefully by what they provide us, will give you a better chance of thinking of us considering you for admissions for fall of 2021 at this moment in juncture. Okay. So think about that. And again, as my colleague from UC San Diego has provided you with a link for information for any up-to-date information that you need, please utilize that resources because again, our job as UC representatives is to provide you with plenty support and resources so that you can be able to make the right decision for yourselves. Okay. So one of the things that a lot of you should be consciously aware of is that the application itself for the University of California opened up in August, and a lot of you already started applying or submitting, filling out the application. My apologies. And this is what we're going to be allowing you to do. And the reason why we want you to do it early is because we want you to get away from the anxiety aspect of applying to the University of California. Thus, this will give you a time for you to start thinking about what information you're putting into the application. Keep in mind that everything you put in the application as of now is all self-reported, meaning that we're not asking you to submit any transcripts unless the university will ask for those, and that comes down the road when you apply to the University of California. But when you're filling out the application itself, you're basically filling out all personal information. You're putting all your courses you've taken. If you're taking any course at the community college, you include those in there. And then, of course, at the same time, you'll be working on your PIQs, filling out your activities and awards in that aspect. So that becomes part of that. And then keep in mind when you do fill out the application, there's a couple of things you want to look for. You want to make sure that you also apply to the scholarships that are offered through the application as well. You want to look at those to see whether they fit your criteria and whether you think that that's going to be something that is going to help you in the process. At the same time, once you fill out the application, you're only allowed to submit your application come November 1st. So you have from November 1st to November 30th. It doesn't matter whether you're the first one or the last one, as long as you get it in before midnight on November 30th. I always recommend that students get the application in the week before Thanksgiving. Give yourself some time to do other things. For example, maybe apply to scholarships, apply to other universities if that's what you're doing. But that's what you want to do in regards to that. But one of the things that I also want to make sure is that for every campus that you select on the application, okay, you have 9 options. You have, for every campus you click on, it'll be $70 per campus. Okay. Some of you will apply for a fee waiver, and that comes at the end of the application. And if you do get a fee waiver, you get up to 4 campuses for free. Okay. If you want to apply to more than that, that's going to be on you as well. All right. So you do have that opportunity in regards to applying to not only a fee waiver, but applying to all of our campuses or applying to just 4. And again, if you do get a fee waiver, please utilize all 4 campuses because we want you to use that resources because we're giving you an opportunity for you to apply to at least 4. And when applying to the University of California, apply broadly, apply to the programs that best interest you, that best fit your need as a candidate for the University of California. Okay. None of the UCs have early decision. So none of us are going to tell you, hey, listen, you need to apply to, listen, you've been admitted early. All of you have to wait till March 1st. That's when a lot of the universities, a lot of the campuses would actually start rolling out their admissions decision. So this is the timeline for you. So you want you to keep an eye on that. So when you applied in November, you submit your application in November. Come December, the Office of Admissions, we're all going to be looking at your application from December all the way to March. Come March, we start rolling out our admissions decisions to individuals. This is why it's important. A lot of you, when the new year starts, you create a portal with that UC campus you apply to, because you're going to be notified of your admissions. Okay. So another thing that I want to tell you is that when you look at the University of California and when you apply to the University of California, two things you want to do. You want to make sure that you either save a PDF of your application or print it out. Two things. Okay. And in that receipt, you're going to be receiving a what we call a UC ID. That ID is going to be very important to identify you, and you're going to actually match that with the campus you applied to, and that's the way we're going to be informing you. Another thing that we want you to be part of is too is that we want you to be proactive in the process when applying to the University of California. And what do I mean by that is that just because you apply and it's all done and just keep checking your mail. No, if you have any updates in regards to changes in your courses, if you are basically getting a bad grade in one of the courses, make sure you notify the university you applied to. The reason why we want you to do that is because it takes two for us to tangle. It takes you, the student, and us to help you in the process and to advise you in regards how you're going to be looked at as a student who applies to one of our campuses. So being proactive in the process is going to be very important. Another thing that actually is really important to the process of admissions to the University of California is the cost of attendance to the university. A lot of you who think about the University of California, okay, a lot of you think that it is very expensive to go. One of the things I will tell you right now is that the cost of attendance to a UC campus or the University of California should be the last thing in your mind. Okay. Right now, what you should be thinking about is applying to the University of California. Think about the programs that are being offered at any given campus, and thinking about, can I get in? Those are the things that you should be worried about at this moment, because what's going to happen is that you're going to be given an opportunity to be admitted, because you're going to find out that a lot of the universities or in the UC system, we have a lot of resources to provide financial aid back into you as a student. So once again, when you think about the University of California, think about this. Can I get in right now? Okay. Worry about the finances later, and I'm going to get into that in a bit. The total cost to attend a UC campus is about $39,000, which includes tuition and board, tuition and fees, room and board, transportation, books and supplies, personal expenses, health, okay, and possibly other expenses that come in along the way. And in many ways or another, the University of California adjusts to the needs of the students to be able to provide them with the resources that they need in order to attend a UC campus. Okay. So in giving you that, so if you look at what we offer our students, think about this. 42% of our students who attend a UC have no debt. 57% pay no tuition. 72% have grants and scholarships. Okay. So if you think about those kinds of things, think about this for a minute. If you want to compare that to any of the CSUs, and I'm not saying that the CSUs are less than us, it all depends what your student is looking for, but I will tell you this. A lot of people say, well, the CSUs or the Cal States in the sense, like Fullerton or Cal State LA, just to name a few in your area, tuition-wise, they're a little bit cheaper. Yes, tuition on our campus is about close to $14,000. And what's going to happen to a lot of you is basically this. The University of California will adjust to making sure we offer you the funding for your student. For example, under our funding, if your parents earn less than $80,000, the University of California will cover your tuition and fees under the Blue and Gold. If your parents are not part of that, if they earn between 80,000 and 100, and I believe it's 174,000, the University of California will provide you with the middle class scholarship. Okay, the middle class scholarship pays up to 40% of your tuition and fees, and that's only if you apply to the university. That's only for public schools, not private schools. Okay, so that's part of the financial aid aspect in regards to the University of California. Again, we want to address any concerns or any issues that the student may have regards to the financial aid need. And with today's times, we basically want to make sure that we offer these opportunities to our students when they apply to the university. Let alone, if you think about nationwide with the University of California, you think about this, for example, and the average debt that students come out with is about $21,000 and then the average nationally is about 30,000. So there's a comparison. Think about this as the University of California. As a University of California, we are one of the best public institutions in the world. We are recognized by what we offer in regards to the research that continues on our campuses. And as a University of California, we are looking for the next the next inventor. We're looking for the next mover and shaker. We're looking for the next creator to be part of the UC family. And when it comes to the University of California, we want to make sure that you become a member of our campuses. Now, within the University of California, we do have other programs, and keep in mind that because we're one campus, we do offer basically a study abroad program. We do offer the UCDC/Sacramento Center program. Another program that we do offer for our students is basically the Intercampus Visitor Program. Okay, the Intercampus Visitor Program is basically if you are a student within the UC, you will allowed to take a term in another UC campus. So we want to make sure that we offer these opportunities for you as a university. We want to make sure that we're open-minded in regards to what we offer you to the University of California. Now, these are the resources that we want to offer you so that you'll be able to kind of go into and think about how the university is going to maneuver through our system and helping you research some of these campuses that offers some of the programs that you're looking for. Okay. Now, one of the things that I want to also make sure is that you understand is that the University of California is fully committed to every student who applies to our campus so that we could offer them admissions to a UC campus. Okay. My name is Juan Carlos Lopez. I'm an advisor for the University of California, Merced. This is my contact information if you want to meet some of us. For now, I'm going to open it up to any other questions you may have so I could address your concerns before we go on our way. Okay. Are there any questions? There's two of us here to answer your questions. We have my colleague from UC San Diego, Christina. She could help you answer some of these questions if you have any questions. Okay.
Hi, Juan Carlos. So I have a question from Matthew Wong. Does applying with an undecided major impact admissions?
It shouldn't impact your consideration for admissions to any UC. However, we always want to make caution the student too as well, because some of the campuses are impacted and they have selective majors. So you got to be careful how you apply to those campuses. But for the most part, the general idea is going undeclared is not going to affect your admissions. But also keep in mind that if a student, for example, let's say they go undeclared and they're on the campus and says, you know what, I want to go undeclared, I want to go into engineering. You got to be careful with those kinds of things too, because sometimes some of the programs might require certain things that come from you as a student who came out of the high school. Okay, so you got to maneuver through that aspect so that you'll be able to have that. But for the most part, generally, and Christina could back me up on this, going undeclared should not affect you being considered for a campus within the UC system. Okay.
Yeah, I want to echo exactly what Juan Carlos said. For our campus, we do have capped majors. Those are our impacted majors. And so if you're interested in one of those, they're mostly in the biological sciences, physical sciences, and of course, our entire School of Engineering. You want to make sure you list those as your first choice. And if you don't have a second choice, that's totally fine. You can put in undeclared, and it's not going to have any impact on your ability in getting admitted into our campus. But if you hit undeclared and then you want to switch into computer science, that's a whole different story. And there might be a possibility that that won't be an option for you, depending on the department. And that's just held at the department level at that time. So being undeclared is not going to affect you. But if your first choice is a capped major or an impacted major, make sure you're listing that as your major choice when you apply.
Right. And Christina made a good point. When applying to the University of California, I forgot to mention, if the student has an option for an alternate major, select an alternate major as well. That is always important because you never know. Okay, some students in the past have been admitted to an alternate major. Now, somebody's asking about psychology program. Keep in mind that psychology is very popular all through UC campuses. And psychology is very competitive to get into. Okay. Some of the campuses do have an impacted psychology program, but for the most part, they're just competitive. For example, in our campus, it is not impacted, but it is competitive to get into. Somebody asked the question, can I submit the scores after the application deadline? For the most part, the general rule for those SAT scores will be submitted. Keep in mind that students, when students decide to take an exam, when they decide to take the exams in December, even though you applied, you just tell the applicant and put in the application that you're planning to submit the the scores in the future. And that's perfectly fine. That is perfectly fine. Keep in mind that again, taking the SATs or submitting the SATs or ACT should not have an impact on your admissions process. That's the goal for the University of California. Okay. Any other questions?
One other question I had from Pereira Nayeli
Uh-huh.
is, how do universities deal with students with mental health problems, anxiety, depression?
One of the good things that the University of California does well is that we have all these services for our students, to student services, maybe different names in different campuses, but it does provide the support for our students who are going with mental issues. From the get-go, students are given all the resources in regards to every campus or to the campus they attend, so they could tap into that. And we always encourage students to not be afraid to seek out those resources. But every campus does a very good job to make sure that we address the concerns of that student, because we want to make sure that they're safe, and that's a priority of the University of California, that our students are safe and healthy, and they receive all the services within the boundaries of the University of California. So that's something that we want to make sure that we help them that. And then Christina actually put something up there for UC San Diego, which I think is going to be very important. Now, another question that somebody, go ahead, Christina.
I just really quickly wanted to say, you don't need to be currently in distress in order to take advantage of these resources that the UC has to offer. If you're a student who has high test anxiety or is having trouble concentrating, having trouble doing time management, these services also help with that. So don't just feel like you have to be a student in distress to take advantage of them. You could just be a student who might need a little bit of help. And I was one of those students at a UC campus, and I'm so happy that I did, because without them, I don't think I would have had such a positive experience on my campus.
Okay. Another question is do you have to live on campus? Well, some of those campuses do have certain rules. For the most part, you don't. But you have to check on which campus, what the rules are for that campus. For example, at UC Merced, we require students to live on campus for first 2 years. Some campuses might say you might have to live there as first year, your first year as a first year. It all depends on the policy of every given campus as far as living on campus. So you want to check those things out, because some of the campuses, for example, Santa Cruz doesn't really have a lot of space to grow. So you got to kind of figure out what their policy is, for example. But you got to check their policy for every campus that has whatever policy they have for living on campus. I don't know if San Diego does require for students to live on campus, so they don't. So that's something that you have to, and I guess that's the reason why you're building that tram, so people could travel back and forth at UC San Diego. Okay. All right. Another question, something about AP exams. Let me see. What was it? Dual enrollment. We do consider those individuals, if the course is transferable, we're going to consider that for whatever value that every campus is going to look at that course. For anything general, you pretty much are going to get the general credit for that course. So keep that in mind. As long as it's transferable, the campus will look at it and it'll give you the appropriate credit for that course. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Boy, okay. Let me see. Again, take advantage of us that are here, especially with me and Christina that are on, to give you as much information as possible. And I think a lot of you do have some few questions. What are your performing arts majors like? Well, for example, at UC Merced, we have the Global Arts program, which encompasses a lot of things. I know San Diego has their own majors in regards to performing arts. UCLA has their own, and some of them, for example, I don't know if Christina want to speak on behalf of your performing arts majors. We don't have that many.
Yeah, so mostly students think about UC San Diego as a STEM school, mostly technology, science, engineering, mathematics. But we actually have a top ranking arts and theater program as well. And we house the La Jolla Playhouse on our campus as well. So if you're a student who's interested in art, in theater, or in dance, look at our campus. We have a number of wonderful programs around those themes. And of course, the La Jolla Playhouse is world renowned, and it's a place where a lot of Broadway shows get workshopped before they hit the big stage.
There's a good question here about business programs. Keep in mind that the UCLA Business at the School of Business, Anderson School of Business, is a graduate program. Okay, so that's a totally different a different aspect. What you're looking for is a program as an undergrad to provide you with maybe if you're looking for a business administration program, then as I mentioned to you earlier, there's only 3 campuses, Berkeley, UCR, and UCI that offers that. But the graduate programs are totally different than what as an undergrad program. You can still get your degree in economics at UCLA and then consider getting into a graduate program. Now, if you get into the Anderson School of Business, and that's a totally different thing that you're looking at. So keep that in mind. Okay. Do taking IB classes impact college admissions more than taking it? No. IBs and APs are equivalent in regards to the value of the challenges that you have, because they're considered to be honors or AP courses in this case. And they're valued the same. Now, where it's different, whether you take not different. If you take the exam, that's a totally different ballgame. But when you're taking them as a class in high school, they receive the same value of honors and APs, honors points in regards to that. Okay, and that's a totally different ballgame when you take the exams. Okay. I don't know. We didn't record the I think they are recording yeah. I don't know if they're recording the program. Yes, Mr. Garcia said they will be available online, so that's something that you want to look at. Okay. Let me see. What? Okay. All right. So keep in mind that oh, here's a question. How can a student apply in water polo team program? Not every school has a water polo team, so only a few. I don't know if San Diego has water polo. If they do, they probably
Yes.
will want you to come out and maybe try out, or maybe they'll look at you and what have you. So you have to kind of look at the athletics for every campus and then contact that coach for that team. See if you have opportunities to be either recruited or could actually walk on as a student. Okay.
Water polo is our top sport. We're Division I
There you
officially
go.
this
There you
year.
go.
If you're interested, email me and I'll send you a contact card for the coach so that you can be in contact with that person.
Okay. So keep in mind that if you want to look at the engineers between the CSUs and the UCs, it all depends what the student is looking for. Okay. Be mindful of those programs because, for example, just to give you an idea, UC Merced just opened up, has a new major, a civil engineering major. We just opened it up this fall for students who want to apply to that. The engineers are different in every campus. If you want to compare this to the CSUs, you kind of have to do your research and think about what is the best engineering program for you to apply to, because I can't really tell you, say, listen, this is better for you. I can't do that. As an advisor, my goal is to tell you, look at your options and think about which campus will offer you whatever you're looking for, because every engineering program is different across the board. And whatever you're looking for, your job is to look at the resources and support that you're going to be getting from that campus. As a research institution, one of the things I will tell you that is that for many UC campuses, the impact that we have in regards to our community and our state and the world is by far very grand, and we make a lot of things work for our campuses. And so we want to give you those opportunities, but you have to do your research and compare the engineers for the CSUs and us. And at the end of the day, you have to make that decision on your own. I can't really tell you we're better because some students might say, you know what, this program is better for me than your program, and that's perfectly fine. Okay. Okay. Are there any updates on the SAT? Okay, as I mentioned to you earlier, and Christina put on on the website about the exams, and keep in mind that that's something that you kind of have to just keep an eye on what the news is saying about the SAT requirement, or not requirement, SAT option, test option. You kind of have to look at that. I have to get used to the idea of of not saying that it's required, because it's a new thing and that we're actually rolling out. So for our students who are applying this year. Okay. Are there any more questions that are relevant to this presentation, or any questions you may have to either me or Christina in regards to the UC system?
There was one more question from Diego Morales. Does passing or failing an AP exam affect the UC app?
No. Passing the exam, are you saying?
Yeah.
Okay. No, it doesn't. What we want to see, for example, is that when a student takes an AP course, we want to see that the student followed through. Okay. If a student takes an AP course and decide not to take the AP, then we want to ask the question, why did you take the AP exam? A lot of students say, well, I wasn't ready for it, or I didn't feel like doing it. We want to see students who do everything, who follow through. That looks good on their application, but not passing the exam does not necessarily, how would I put this? It doesn't look bad on you. It just basically looks at, oh, well, you're not going to get any kind of incentive in regards to maybe some kind of course credit at the university. And keep in mind that when receiving the scores, every UC campuses will evaluate those scores differently than some. Okay, so you also got to do research. How does a 3 affect on this campus, and so how does a 4 affect in this campus? That in every campus we tally those scores very differently. Okay.
Yeah, the AP test is completely optional. So don't feel like you need to take the exams. But if you want to get college credit or credit for a college course, maybe you want to be exempt from Calculus 1, then yeah, you would want to take the AP exam. But
Right.
not taking it is not going to play a role in how we see you in admission.
Right. So we want to thank you very much for showing up today. We appreciate that you joined us. I know it's your Saturday. You could be doing other things. You could be watching cartoons, or you're following or catching up on your novellas, if that's what you do. But for the most part, we want to thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you are safe out there and you have a wonderful day. And if there's any questions, like I said, there's my contact information. Christina offered some of her contact information as well. But do please, I am your local representative, along with Ashley Alejandra, who's also will probably be contacting some of your schools to make sure that you get that attention from our colleagues and ourselves. Thank you very much. Have yourself a wonderful day. Thank you, Christina, for joining me today, and wish you luck and be safe out there, everyone. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, we are clear. Thank you so much. I really think it went well. I think you were presenting, it was good. It was good on my end. I was watching it as a viewer and just listening to the information. I thought everything was good. I really liked this. I actually shared this with some friends of mine.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, great job, guys.
Even though they don't live in LA.
No, that's fine. I mean,
because I think it applies to everybody.
And it does.
Yeah,
go ahead, Christina.
I shared it too. I shared it as well. I thought that was perfect.
Again, the idea of making sure that the students have the right information, and because a lot of times